Running impact, like base fitness, is a measure of how hard you're working, but this is derived from the speeds you're running and the gradients you're running on. So it's really a measure of how much mechanical stress you've put through your body and your legs, or the amount of impact that you've put your legs under. The running impact numbers can be really useful for a lot of different reasons. One of them, they're really motivational, so you know that each week you want to hit a certain amount of running impact in order to not do too little compared to the weeks before or too much, because that's how they're most useful, is to work as a limiter, so you're not hitting the injury risk zone. You're not sort of exposing yourself to the risks of just doing too much impact too soon. By gradually increasing how much impact you're doing week on week, you can really limit that injury risk. It can also be used if you're coming back from injury, for example. A lot of running related injuries are caused from the running impact, and what better way to come back from injury than gradually increasing the amount of impact you're doing each week. Measuring how much time you're doing each week or how many kilometers you're running, it really doesn't do it justice, because it doesn't take into account the speed you're running or the incline, and that's exactly what running impact does. If you do one big downhill or a very fast run, the impact is going to be far higher and it's going to be far more detrimental to your body, and it's going to take longer to recover from. Base fitness and running impact, within the app we have a lot of different ways you can analyze using these numbers, and one of them is the accumulated load. And you're going to have an accumulated load for base fitness and accumulated load for running impact. And generally, especially for an ultra, the higher these numbers are, the better trained you're going to be to manage the distance you're running. So the higher base fitness number means you're going to be able to manage just moving and breathing and your heart working for that length of time. And the higher the running impact number is going to be, the better your legs will manage the demands of running those sorts of distances. So the better they're going to manage the downhills and just sort of like moving for a long time. But obviously you want to get as high numbers as possible, but you can't just do loads and loads of training immediately to try and increase those numbers. So we have some great graphs which allow you to track these numbers gradually to try and improve at a sustainable rate. The main one we use is the training stress graph, which has got two key bands. Well, actually 3 key bands. One of them is green, and if you've got the line within this green zone, it's going to mean that you're increasing your accumulated load numbers at a very sustainable, healthy rate that you should be able to manage long term. If you head up into the red zone, you're going to be gaining fitness too fast, so that means you're going to have a higher injury risk, and you're probably not going to be able to sustain those improvements in the long term, and that means you're going to have to take extra rest, and you're not going to be able to keep the numbers up there, and you're going to have this sort of like continual do too much and then have to take time off, and do too much and have to take time off, which can be less productive in the long term. And then the other zone is the yellow zone, which is sort of like the performance zone. And this is where you want to get the line if you're going to have a race coming up, or if you want to have some extra recovery and really be in top shape. And this means that the load you're doing at that time will be slightly less than what you've been doing over the previous weeks, which is a great place to be if you are going to be doing a race. It can be actually just as detrimental to be over-rested for a race than under-rested. So using this training stress graph, you can really get both your running impact numbers in the right place and your base fitness numbers. And these two might be slightly different. Say for example, someone like myself, I ski a lot in the winter, so that means my base fitness numbers are really high in the winter and I've got great base fitness, but my running impact is actually comparatively weak, like I don't run that much during the winter. So then when I come to the spring, the main idea is to try and improve those running impact numbers gradually and healthily whilst maintaining the base fitness numbers. And that means come race day, it might mean that I need to do more base fitness training in the week before the race than running training, so I can get both in the yellow, because the more training you've done in the past, the more training you have to do to maintain that fitness. So that means in the tapering week, for example, in the spring, I'd have to do quite a bit of cycling in the taper week and a bit of running. Whereas then later in the year, when my running impact numbers have got a bit higher, I can do mainly running in the tapering week. So by having these two systems split out, you can really get yourself in a much better place come rest day, where everything feels right, and you haven't done too much, you haven't done too little. It really helps you nail how much you should be doing, because training is all about load management, which these numbers can really help with, and intensity distribution, which is when you're running either harder or slower and for how much. So now within the app we have two separate ways of making sure you get both of these right. For both base fitness and running impact, we also have a slightly simpler graph which is going to help you in the short term get a handle on whether you're doing too much or too little load. So the idea with training, it's always good to aim for very gradual progressions. So within the app we have a graph which plots your 3-week average for the past 3 weeks for both running impact and base fitness. Then we have a suggested zone for where you want to get that week. This suggested zone, it allows you to do a bit more than you have done for the past 3 weeks and a little bit less, so it really keeps you sort of like trying to hit a similar amount, which is motivational, so you don't do too little training in a week, but also it gives you a big red flag immediately that if you do far too much training, you can adapt workouts, skip workouts, take some extra rest to try and not really go over and above, which isn't going to be sustainable in the long term. So this is what I use the most in order to try and adapt workouts to get both numbers in the correct window. So it might be, especially in the spring when I haven't run that much, that I only have a limited amount of running impact I can do that week. It's kind of like a cap. And I want to save that for a lot of my key sessions. So that means my recovery sessions I might be doing on the bike as a form of cross training. But it really is a case of sometimes I get to the maximum amount of running impact I can do that week, and that's it, I have no more allowance. So in that case, what I can do is I can continue the rest of the workouts that week on the bike or just a form of cross training, or adapt the running workouts to have much less impact. And you're going to see this in the numbers. Say for example, if you do an interval session and you're running both hard, uphill and downhill, you're going to have high impact numbers. Whereas if you do an uphill only treadmill session, you're going to have relatively low impact numbers. So you can really adapt workouts to be able to get them done, but in a way that will allow you to have these sustainable gains and not do too much, which can expose you to those injury risks.